It's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me, people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is living in the new world with an whole soul.
Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is September 26th. 2023, and the liberals want to erase their Nazi applauding history. They want to remove it from the House of Commons. They want to erase it from the video recording and everything. They want it gone from history. They don't want to admit the mistake they made. They want people just forget about it. Please don't politicize this very political thing that we did, this huge error, this massive F up, except that I don't think it was that much of an F up. They are just mad they got caught. They're not sorry they did this. Nobody's falling all over themselves to say sorry. They're saying, don't politicize this. They're not saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe our party did this. Our government was responsible for this. They're in fact trying to share the blame with the House of Commons. This embarrasses everybody. It's very, very interesting. The rhetoric that's coming out of this, the way they're framing this, they are not interested in actually apologizing. They're interested in people just moving on and forgetting about this. They're not sorry for what they did. In fact, I think they'd probably do it again, given the opportunity. I think, who invited the Nazi, and their name rhymes with Chrystia Freeland. What happens if Order 66 is given? And Order 66, I believe, is the order given to the stormtroopers to take out the Jedi, right? And so what happens if somebody was saying that this all seems like an invasion? Europe seems like an invasion, and there's a whole bunch of fighting-age people being put up in hotels across the country. What happens if in Europe that order is given and people come and knock on your door and they say, you come out to the park right now and you form up? And you say, what does that mean? And they hit you with the butt of a rifle. Right? And so what happens in that case? What happens in that case here? In that case, you can't sell your house and move to Mexico, right? And do you think that in that situation where people who have rifles and maybe they've proven that they'll use them, what do you think that your neighborhood's going to do? Are they going to stand around and wait for the police? Possibly. Are they going to get slaughtered? I don't know. I'm not trying to paint that picture, but I'm saying it doesn't seem like Canada has a rational or reasonable you know how you have fire drills, right? Somebody not pulls the fire alarm, but everybody agrees we're going to pretend pull the fire alarm. Definitely not a fire, but we're going to act as if there's a fire. We don't have any kind of drills for what happens if things go south. And how would you communicate to the rest of your neighbors without letting those people who don't have good intentions and maybe guns and trucks and the whole deal? How do you do that? And again, I'm not trying to fearmonger or anything to that effect. It just seems like I was looking at the movement of a whole bunch of I'll show you today. Some of the tabs we have are people arriving in Europe, and we're having similar numbers arrive through different immigration means. It's a different method, but a similar result. So, except they're just not arriving by ship, they're arriving by plane. It's very, very, as a thought experiment, something to consider. Protests against Modi in Ottawa, that's a bad look for Canada, and Mexican drug cartels are trafficking people in Quebec. Again, the country is much less safe now, and it doesn't seem to be acknowledged by anyone, right? Like, we used to have commercials that told you to play safely and, check in with your parents and things like that. Ford, the auto company, not the Ontario Premier, is winding down its Ontario battery plant. This one we didn't pay for. We paid for Volkswagens and Stellantis, not Ford. So Ford's saying, yeah, we don't think we can operate efficiently monetarily. Alberta energy regulations. Alberta is complaining about the federal energy regulations, and they're saying that they're not going to do that. And the Kremlin is firing back about Canada's celebration of a Nazi. So we've got lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, the Nazi stuff. We have a whole bunch of tabs. I have a whole bunch of tabs to go through with regards to what's happened in the wake of Canada celebrating a literal Nazi. First, the memes, top notch. And here is what actually happened in the House if Anthony Rota were speaking truth. And somebody put this together, and I thought it was worth sharing because holy cow, right? We embarrassed ourselves this much. This is what happened, and the rest of the world knows it. And if you look up Canada, if you look up international coverage of this, this is kind of what it looks like. So FYI, here is Anthony Rota, this is dubbed, this is fake, but the audio is spot on. Here we go.
We have here in the chamber today a literal Nazi. His name is Yaroslav Hunka, a Waffen SS soldier who pledged allegiance to Hitler, fought against our allies in the Soviet Union, and was complicit in the Holocaust. This man's a criminal. Not a great look for us.
At this man's a criminal, it cuts to Trudeau and Zelensky nodding at each other. And yeah, spot on. Absolutely spot on. Here's the post-millennial. This is real. Now back into reality. Pierre Poilievre calls out Trudeau for not being present in question period and asks the speaker, he always finds someone else to throw under the bus. Are you that person? This is 2 minutes, but I think it's well worth it. And this is what was going on yesterday in the House of Commons. People are not happy about what happened on Friday, but is anybody taking responsibility? Oh, no. Like I said, nobody wants to apologize. It was Anthony Rota's fault and his fault alone, and we don't have any responsibility for any of this, except that they do. Oh, well, right? Here's the first little exchange, Pierre Poilievre blaming Trudeau. Here you go.
Leader of the opposition.
Well, if the Prime Minister is so proud of how he conducted himself, he would be on the floor in the House of Commons today answering questions. Instead of hiding under a rock. Canadians are sick and tired of a Prime Minister.
Honourable members, that the presence in the gallery, all MPs have duties in the chamber and outside. I just want to remind them that referring to their presence or absence is not allowed in the rules. The Honourable Opposition Leader, please continue.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are sick and tired of a Prime Minister who never takes responsibilities for the things that happen under his watch, whether it's the record high inflation or interest rates or the doubling of housing costs or the constant international embarrassments. He always finds someone else to throw under the bus. Are you that person?
Mr. Speaker, I know the Leader of the Opposition doesn't want to rely on the facts, but the facts in this situation are that the government had no prior knowledge that this individual was being invited, nor that he would be recognized. And if they go back and recall what happened on Friday, they will see that it was indeed the Speaker of the House that recognized this individual. We were all caught off guard. It's deeply embarrassing to this Parliament, but to Canada, and I ask that we all deal with this responsibly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All deal with this responsibly, which means don't talk about this too much. We're all really embarrassed here. Holly Doan is reporting that man just popped up and was lauded as a war hero in the House, and that's not that not a single person in the PMO, PCO, or Global Affairs thought to confirm a few details in advance is not credible. That's Vivian B, an ex-Canadian ambassador to Israel. So people who come and meet world leaders are vetted. They are vetted very, very carefully, and that's why it's not credible to think that he met with the what was his name? Met with Zelensky and Trudeau. It's not credible because there's pictures that his family posted about him meeting with Zelensky and Trudeau. Hunka. Right? Here's Matt Gurney, and he's responding to Mackenzie Gray. Mackenzie Gray says, LPC House Leader Karina Gould sought unanimous consent to strike Anthony Rota's comments about Yaroslav Hunka from the record, and the CPC denied it. CPC MP Marty M says, deleting words from Hansard would only have one purpose, to try and forget what happened. And I think that's accurate. And Matt says, I don't even know what to say. This proposal is insane. What the heck is going on with them, with these liberals? But we'll get to changing history in just a minute. Andy Lee is talking about how this person got invited to Parliament in the first place, and there's a connection that Freeland is very close with. So here's how this all breaks down. Naya says, turns out Chrystia Freeland is well aware of the Nazi guest in the House of Commons. In fact, she heard how great the Nazis were her entire life. Post from 2021 says her grandfather volunteered to be a Nazi in the same division, and her uncle gave lectures of their greatness. That's interesting. Here's the obituary confirming the familial connections to Chrystia Freeland. So yes, it appears that her uncle gave a whitewashing lecture on the Galactica, I'm not saying it right, division honored in the House of Commons, also known as the 14th Waffen Grenadier Division of the SS Nazi Party. So that's pretty wild, and you can read that. Link is in the description. Carries on. She says, if I'm getting this correct, Christia's mother was Helena Kromak. Her mother's sister, Freeland's aunt, was Nataka Kromak. I'm getting these wrong. Who married Marslav S., making him her uncle. So Christia's uncle's father, which would be Christia's grandfather, right? If it's your uncle's father, it's your grandfather. Evidently served in the Waffen SS that received a standing ovation. Yes. And Morslav's daughter is Alexandria S., a member of the Ukrainian-Canadian Congress, who's organizing protests and rallies and lobbying the government of Canada to send more humanitarian aid and weapons to Ukraine. So it appears that one of the main groups backing assistance for Ukraine is run by Chrystia Freeland's cousin by marriage. Am I getting this right here? Her uncle's daughter? And so then, stay with me, Chrystia Freeland's uncle and cousin by marriage help run the Ozrydok Ukraine Cultural and Education Center in Winnipeg that receives federal funding, correct? According to this archive, Chrystia Freeland's uncle, Morslav S., was fathered by Boris, a soldier in the Ukrainian Galakia division, the Waffen SS thing that we just talked about. So it looks like one of her distant relatives served in the Nazi Party Waffen SS division. Yes. And a big thank you to this guy for finding this post confirming that indeed this is indeed Chrystia Freeland's uncle. So congrats to this guy on being honored at the 34th Ostiva Foundation dinner supporting MPUE and EUBP. And Minister of Foreign Affairs Chrystia Freeland is in Radisson riding tonight to help honor her uncle, Dr. Morslav S., right? Pretty wild stuff. I think that's pretty ironclad reporting, right? Here's Paul Mitchell to wrap it up for us. He says, hey, Chrystia Freeland, the post below states your grandpa enlisted in the Nazi SS Galactica division. I'm getting it so wrong. I'm sorry. It actually says your uncle's father, but that would be your grandpa, right? Is this true? This is the exact same division which Jaroslav Hunka belonged to. You know, the Nazi who you gave a standing ovation to in Parliament. So you knew about Hunka and the SS division. Why are you liberals pretending that you didn't know? Oh, that's right. It didn't go off as planned, eh? I was wondering why you had such a huge smile on your face and as you were applauding. If you knew that Hunka was from your grandpa's SS division, it would make more sense. By the way, the SS division was involved in several massacres, including women and children. Do you have inside knowledge about that too? Is there anything else you'd like to tell us? We'll wait. And this here says, this is a source that Andy Lee often uses, and she says, thank you to Bluebell's Forest, this is found in translation, Bluebell's Forest, for finding this important piece. Jaroslav Hunka donated to the Ukrainian-Canadian Congress, UCC, run by Chrystia Freeland's cousin, Alexandra S. Is this why he was invited to Parliament? Because he was making these donations. So found in translation says, Jaroslav Hunka and son Martin Hunka are frequent donors to the Ukrainian-Canadian Congress. Searching Hunka in UCC's report finds 28 results. UCC members' benefit include invitations to selected events. Probably this is how Hunka was invited to Ottawa. So it was totally the Speaker of the House's fault. So at some point in the chain, Chrystia Freeland would know about this. And so, do you think that if she knew top of mind who he was exactly, she would be clapping so enthusiastically, right? I think she'd be clapping even more enthusiastically, which is why Paul said, you seem to be very enthusiastic about this whole turn of events. Here's Golden Pup, and he says, who invited the Nazi? This remains the central unanswered question. I don't know. Evidently, it was not the House of Commons Speaker Rota. He has made two careful, formal statements on the matter while he takes responsibility for everything but inviting Jaroslav Hunka. It's clear that Trudeau and company want Rota to be the fall guy, but responsibility rests with the PMO. The fact that Rota hasn't resigned yet may imply that he feels it's not warranted or that he doesn't deserve the sole blame for this mess. I think that's probably accurate. Notably, Anthony Rota cannot be directly fired or removed by a single person or entity. He can only be removed by a motion of non-confidence with a majority of the House of voting to remove him. In a very vulnerable minority government like we have now, it seems highly implausible that the LPC could pull together enough support to ditch him just for their own political expediency. Can Jagmeet Singh really sink that low? Wait, don't answer that. We need more. We need to keep pressing on this. And Don says the same. He says, while it's plain Rota feels guilty for what happened, I don't think he invited the Nazi. I think he would have said so if he had. He's already made, and he echoes the statements of, I think he said it first, and Golden Pup was echoing his statements. Here is Sarah, and she says the Liberal government House leader admits her government vetted the Nazi who was allowed into the House of Commons. When it comes to everyone that was invited to Parliament, of course, that vetting happened. Huh. Interesting, right? Here she is.
Vetting happened. When it comes to everyone that was invited to Parliament, of course, that vetting happened.
Right. I'd like the longer clip, but that's what we've got. Here's another Karina Gould clip. Rupa is pointing this one out. When you think the Liberals can't become more shameless, they do. If this is how brazenly they are publicly in trying to erase the public record, taking a leaf from Big Brother in Orwell's 1984, imagine what they're doing in private. This is scorched earth from Trudeau, not just for the country, but for his own party. Yeah, I hope these Liberals don't get a single seat. That would be just poetic justice. That would be beautiful. I hope Canada completely abandons them. They've become lunatics. Absolute, complete lunatics. And I think they always were. They always have been. Men can be women? Come on. Okay, here is the back and forth on this one.
I would like to ask for unanimous consent to adopt the following motion. That notwithstanding any standing order, special order, or usual practice of the House, the recognition made by the Speaker of the House of an individual present in the galleries during the joint address to Parliament by His Excellency Volodymyr Zelensky be struck from the appendix of the House of Commons debates of Thursday, September 21st, 2023, and from any House multimedia recording. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, yes, I guess we have to go to the, we'll ask about unanimous consent, then go to it. All those opposed to the Honourable Ministers moving the motion will please say nay. We don't have unanimous consent.
To explain our rationale.
He ends up getting shouted down, but basically those who forget history are doomed to repeat it, right? So that's essentially the rationale. We should not strike this from the record because we did it. Yeah. Matt Gurney, I've already read this. I don't know what to say. The proposal is insane. What the heck is going on with these Liberals? Right, they're insane. Here is Rex Glazier. He's talking about the same clip. He says, this is what regimes in China, Iran, Cuba, Russia, and now Canada do. That's not acceptable, right? And just like editing history to suit your political narrative, that's not Canadian as far as I remember, right? Shannon is responding to the National Post story on this whole thing. Conservatives stop Liberals from erasing recognition of Nazi war veteran from House of Commons record. So there you go. Karina needs to resign, says Sharon. This is not just a little thing. How can you ever trust a Liberal again? I don't think you can, not reasonably. Here is the Liberals changing their tune from 2022 with a flashback to 2022 to remember how the Liberals were politicizing these things. Here we go.
I want to please ask all colleagues, particularly those in the Conservative Party of Canada, to make sure that we do not politicize this issue. I don't think it helps anybody. Standing with those who support white supremacy, who support Nazi views.
Members of this House who meet with known Nazis who spread misinformation, disinformation, glorify the Holocaust, who speak against anti-Muslim rhetoric.
How much vitriol do we have to see of honk honk, which is an acronym for Hail Hitler?
Right? So in 2023, let's please not politicize this. In 2022, honk honk was Hail Hitler. Nope. I don't think so, right? CBC News says the Kremlin says It's outrageous that a Ukrainian man who served as one of Adolf Hitler's Waffen SS units during the Second World War was presented to Canada's parliaments last week as a hero. It is outrageous. That's outrageous. Kian Beck says Trudeau says to be wary of Russian disinformation when asked about the Waffen SS he brought into the House of Commons. You can't make this up. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. This is Justin Trudeau, honestly, truthfully. Benny says Justin Trudeau's now blaming the fact that he and Zelensky honored a literal Nazi with a standing ovation before Parliament on Russian disinformation. It is incredible. And Chaya says, can someone please explain to me what Russian disinformation has to do with the footage of Justin Trudeau and Zelensky cheering on a Nazi SS soldier? Really, here's Justin Trudeau being asked about this and immediately pivoting to Russian disinformation. It is not Russian disinformation. It is absolutely accurate.
Obviously, it's extremely upsetting that this happened. The speaker has acknowledged his mistake and has apologized. But this is something that is deeply embarrassing to the Parliament of Canada and, by extension, to all Canadians. I think particularly of Jewish MPs and all members of the Jewish community across the country who are commemorating Yom Kippur today. I think it's going to be really important that all of us push back against Russian propaganda, Russian disinformation, and continue our steadfast and unequivocal support for Ukraine as we did last week with announcing further measures to stand with Ukraine in Russia's illegal war against it.
Right. So we should send more money to Ukraine. Don't talk about the Nazi. Here's the NDP, and the NDP is taking exactly the same line as the Liberals. Earlier, somebody was saying, and I showed you a tab that was saying they weren't sure that the Liberals would be able to pull together the political will to remove a speaker. But if the NDP backs the motion and they want that speaker gone, maybe Jagmeet will be the speaker. Ha, right. Here's just 1 minute of this, just to give you a taste of the direction the NDP are going with it. Here we go.
It's with great sadness that I take the floor today, following the statement you just made, and to deal with what happened in the House on Friday.
Parliament entrusts the Speaker to guide this Parliament through challenging circumstances. And Mr. Speaker, you have done an admirable job doing just that. Through COVID-19, the occupation of downtown Ottawa last winter, and the putting in place of a hybrid Parliament. The procédure et les usages de Chambre des communes.
The House of Commons procedures and practices indicate that the Speaker has various roles, including ceremonial and diplomatic, and our Speaker often acts as a representative of the House. His ceremonial role is important, and that is why he alone has the privilege of recognizing visitors in the gallery. This privileged role led to a situation on Friday in which an individual who, according to the Simon Wiesenthal Center, was a member of a Nazi unit responsible for the death of many Jews and was convicted in the Nuremberg trials.
This individual was a guest of this House, and shocking that members of Parliament rose to give him an ovation. Members did so because we took the Speaker's word that this individual should indeed be granted this honour in good faith. We have members of Parliament who have dedicated significant parts of their lives to fighting racism, fascism, and anti-Semitism. We have members of Parliament who lost family members.
So they're going in the direction of blaming the Speaker. So they may just back that movement to remove him. We'll see. We'll see. True North is reporting Conservative MP Chris W. cast doubt on the claim that the Speaker, Anthony Rota, was solely responsible for inviting a Nazi soldier to Parliament. Walkerton says the Trudeau government is also to blame. Yes.
Speaker, on the same point of order. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate your desire to take full responsibility for this entire event. But, Mr. Speaker, those of us who asked for guests to be able to attend Friday's proceedings know that we were required to give notice of the individuals that we asked for permission. That went through a process. Emails were sent to those individuals. You, Mr. Speaker, were not standing at the door of this parliamentary precinct. There was massive security protocols. Individuals were required to be on extensive lists. That, Mr. Speaker, I don't believe that you individually vetted each of those names. Parliamentary Protective Services is responsible to the government. The lists were given to the government. One would assume that there would have been some process of vetting. If the government is now saying, Mr. Speaker, that none of that happened, Mr. Speaker, I know your desire to take this on, but I don't believe for a second that you went, verified each person who was invited to this place, verified that they were not a security risk, and then stood at the door and let them in. I know that wasn't the truth. So this attempt by the government to state that this was your doing and your doing alone, that you alone are responsible and that they bear no responsibility, is to send a signal to all Canadians and all of our allies that we're not serious about anything. Well, I'm not going to take collective responsibility for what, in fact, is the government's responsibility. And, Mr. Speaker, I'd recommend you not do it either.
To be honest, I still can't believe that nobody in the CPC walked out. CBC News is reporting multiple Liberal cabinet ministers say they believe Anthony Rota's days as House of Commons Speaker are numbered. Radio Canada has learned. So that's not surprising. Not surprising. Yesterday, CTV News, yesterday afternoon at noon, they posted this. MPs give a standing ovation to 98-year-old Yaroslav Hunka, who fought for the 1st Ukrainian Division. Watch here. And Andy Lee said, like, you're not still running with this, are you? You can't, you've got to be kidding me, right? 2 days later, and this is what they're running with, she says. And Andy Lee says, oh, for goodness sake, why bother deleting it now? So they deleted the post now, right? Now we've been told by people to delete these posts because obviously people see through them, right? One of the best ways to disarm these communists and these wokeists is to point out what they're doing and their goal, and then to respond. Pastor Henry Hildebrandt says, the new Justin Trudeau glossary, Nazi equals German MEP who hate Hitler. Honking is saluting Hitler. Hate is parental rights. Misinformation is news with facts. Disinformation, anything Jordan Peterson says. Misogynistic, a trucker in front of his office. All other problems, it's Russia. Definitely. Unbelievable stuff, right? Here is something to keep in mind. Operation Paperclip is one thing, but we defeated the Nazis. The Nazis one of them was the head of NASA. One of them was head of the EU Commission. One of them was NATO's chief of staff back in the 60s, I guess, 50s or 60s. And one of them was the Secretary General to the United Nations. So I've long thought that rather than losing the Second World War, they left somebody holding the bag and they dispersed in order to reform, kind of like a Hydra, right? In a new entity or in a different form, because Germany didn't work taking over the world. And so you needed a supranational entity and probably multiple. And so from Nazi Germany, they came to the United States, created the United Nations, the WHO, and all the rest. And these supranational entities are being used to do exactly what they couldn't do in the 1940s. Speculation, right? Wake Awake says Klaus Schwab, he had a Nazi father. Chrystia Freeland has a Nazi grandfather. Vladimir Zelensky, Nazi battalion, right? The Azov battalion. It's simply poetic justice that these WEF representatives would be honoring and applauding an actual SS Nazi soldier. It fits, right? Here's the Toronto Star trying to say it's everybody's fault. Canada embarrassed itself when it honored a man who fought for the Nazis. Yeah. We embarrassed ourselves when we voted for Justin Trudeau, that's for sure. And when it came to shielding Ukraine's president from Russia's attempts to discredit him and his country, Canada was no help at all. Oh, yes. Woe is us, right? What's worse than damaging Canada's reputation? But dear Zelensky, we damaged Mr. Zelensky's reputation too. Spare me. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. We should tell Zelensky that we expect repayment on those loans to start any day. 7 or 10% or whatever the going rate in Canadian banks is, by the way. In Canadian dollars, no less. I think we've been sending US dollars. Canada Proud says, do you agree with Michelle Rempel that the Liberals are scapegoating? It's time for Trudeau to resign, sign the petition. So they're always trying to get people to sign petitions. I've been doing this for a while. I haven't seen one petition do a single meaningful thing yet. But people love signing them. I'm doing something. I'm signing a petition. Here is Conservative MP won't accept collective responsibility. Here we go.
As chair of the Canada-Slovakia Parliamentary Friendship Group, it's my obligation to point out that the individual in question who was recognized on Friday was part of the division that was used against the Slovak National Uprising, which was a military uprising organized by Slovak resistance movements during World War II, comprised of the anti-Nazi political faction of the Slovak nation, which is my heritage. Units of this division this man fought with were sent to help squash the Slovak rebellion. Battle groups were formed to actively search out and destroy members of the resistance. And according to Slovak historian Kay Fremal, the division's members were helping in anti-partisan, repressive, and terrorist actions and committed murders and other excesses. Based on what I've heard in the House today, I feel like this is the government trying to collectivize responsibility for an incident that was solely within their purview. By inviting the Ukrainian president to our country, we had a duty to protect him in all aspects. And by the government failing to have either a non-existent or judgment-free vetting process for members who would be recognized and lauded in the House of Commons, the House of Commons should be not accepting collective responsibility for that abject, egregious lack of judgment that has tarnished the reputation of our country and led to people like the ambassador from Poland demanding an apology from us. This is a time in which our country needs to be having, our allies need to be standing with us. There should be no question about whether or not we have our act together, and yet here we are having this debate. It's beyond an embarrassment. It is a stain on our country. And I refuse, as a member of this place who represents 120,000 Canadians, to collectively share responsibility with a government that has a pattern of not vetting questionable individuals that they take meetings with. Jaswal Atwal, Joshua Boyle. Enough. I will not, on behalf of my constituents, take 1 ounce of blame for this government failing a vetting process. They can say, Mr. Speaker, it was your purview. They invited this man. They invited this world global leader here. And they failed to vet this. So no, on behalf of the constituents of Calgary Nose Hill, I will not accept collective responsibility, and the buck stops at the Prime Minister's office.
So there you go. I'm still blocked by Michelle Rempel. Here's Elon Musk. He says, anyone feeling late stage empire vibes? And he's got a meme here. It says, watching the Roman Empire collapse again, but this time with Wi-Fi and memes. So that's always fun. Here is Mr. Andrew Scheer talking about the same thing that Michelle Rempel was talking about. And Christian says, Scheer is trying to tell us that not a single person in Parliament stopped to think, wait, he fought against Russia in World War II? Your party's ignorance of history does not excuse you from accountability in this matter. I'm shocked that nobody in the Conservative Party Googled this guy, because they had an invitation with his name on it. Googled this guy, nothing. And nobody walked out. Nobody said, like, we're not doing this. We shouldn't do this. Bad idea. Nobody emailed the speaker to say, hey, that guy that you told us that was going to be honored shouldn't be honored. Nobody did anything like that. Pretty wild stuff. Here is Wiretap Media sharing this from 2015. Western media and liberal-funded organizations have been trying to combat imaginary far-right neo-Nazi movements in Canadian schools while simultaneously whitewashing neo-Nazi summer camps in Ukraine. The Azov Battalion hosts military-style training for young children for recruitment. Yay! So Ukraine's neo-Nazi summer camp, in quotes, military training for young children, paramilitary recruits. And they're hanging out there, and they've got a balaclava on. And if you've been paying attention to the symbology, right, you can compare. So it's very, very interesting what's going on, what's ignored by Canadian politicians, how much money we spend. We train people in Ukraine, and we have been for a long time. All of this is not great, and I don't think that it helps our national security. I don't think that we're being kept safe by our open borders policies, by this liberal government, by our woke military, by our police that are afraid to stop somebody from committing an actual crime, but will come to your home and tell you that you've harmed somebody's feelings, maybe online, with your strong political stance or your strong wording online or something to that effect. It's very, very concerning. And when we have our politicians who can't apologize for bringing a literal Nazi, an SS Waffen division Nazi, and having a standing ovation, and not one of them did anything about it, right? Like, wow, it's just mind-boggling. I can't even believe that it happened, right? And we just insulted India. Like, and I mean, on the one side, I guess this whole celebrating a Nazi thing turns the page on talking about, what evidence do you have that Modi killed a guy? Can you show us? Nobody's talking about that right now, right? It's very interesting. I thought this was a good Canadian historic part of our history, part of our heritage minute. And this one's about flags, right? And I think there's a new debate about flags that's going on. And I think that it's interesting, the comparison, because the goal back then, the goal when coming up with a new Canadian flag during Diefenbaker's time, was to unite the country. And right now, the flags are being used as a wedge to divide the country. And the Liberals are using everything they can, including bringing literal Nazis to the House of Commons, to divide the country. So I'm on board with division. I actually quite like the blue sides. There's one, I haven't seen this commercial in a lot of years, but there's one example of the flag, if you're watching the video of this, where there's a blue, like ocean to ocean, right, representing the two oceans. And I didn't always wonder why it was red, like red on each side for Canada, but the blue looks really nice. Okay, anyway, this is part of our heritage. Here we go.
You won't believe some of these proposals. Look at this one. And this. Phew. Now this is what I wanted from the start. But Mike Pearson wants this. Well, he is the Prime Minister, but blue is not an official Canadian color. Meanwhile, John Diefenbaker and the Tories want this. You know, the only way I'll ever get the whole committee together is to persuade my Liberals to reject their own Prime Minister's choice. Well, the Tories will agree to that at least. Is there one design here that the whole committee can agree on, that says Canada? No mistake about it. I wonder. Prime Minister and Mr. Diefenbaker, I was just talking about you. Are we all going to the same party?
Amazingly, John Matheson MP would achieve the unanimity he sought.
Right? And so uniting the country was important at one time. And you have to wonder why it's not important anymore. It's very important, in fact, for division to be pushed. Division is the order of the day, and that's very concerning.